So I restarted it.
Okay, it's working finally. Okay, perfect. Yes, leave it like, let's leave it like that. Thank you. Hey, Professor Tannenbaum. Basia, I think you just connected. So maybe we can... No, yeah. Okay, so I try to... Basia, I left it to you.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I think we still have 10 minutes, but...
Don't worry. Hello, Andy. Can you hear me? Hello.
At least we can hear the paper, so...
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear him. I'm not sure if he can hear us. Yeah.
Maybe we write him something. I don't think he.
Yeah.
Hello?
Hello?
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi, can you hear us okay?
Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes. We can hear you.
Hello?
Hello.
Ah, I hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, great. Good morning. How are you?
You can hear me now.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Excellent.
This stuff is so flaky. Oops, is that better? Now, does this look okay?
Yes.
Futs. All right. Yeah, you're Vasha?
Yes, I'm Vasya. Nice to meet you. And Anwar is also here.
Hi.
Okay.
See which mic I have on. Is the audio okay?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay. You know, there's so much software that thinks it knows better, and it's got its own stupid settings instead of using the system settings. And, you know, I have a professional radio microphone, you know, which is used like by radio stations,
Wow.
but it seems to want to default to the $20 cheap, you know, webcam mic instead of the $300 professional mic. And it takes a certain amount of effort to convince it, please use the professional mic and not the stupid webcam mic. But I think we're on there now. All right.
Great. So you haven't been teaching this past year on Zoom?
No, I can't. Really don't like doing things on Zoom. This may be slightly better because you might see the people, but if you're giving a lecture to 200 people, you know, and halfway through the connection breaks and you just keep talking for another hour and there's nobody there. Such is the nature of Zoom. And I really don't like that very much. So I sort of gave up. I've been teaching till 2020. I've been doing at least one course, but now I just decided I just like Zoom so much that I just gave up.
Right. Yeah, we're doing hybrid teaching. So I have both Zoom open and I have people in class at the same time. It's so distracting. Yes.
Yeah. But, yes. I mean, here, universities are all closed, you know, so you have no choice. That they're only open for a very, very small number of, small number of things like, you know, if you're doing experiments with mice in the biology department, you can't leave the mice alone for a year. You know.
People have started joining. So you can see there is an attendees tab if you want to check who's here. You don't have to.
What is there?
There is a panelists tab and attendees tab on your Zoom. Yeah. So if you click on participants, do you see participants?
Right. Oh yeah. Right. Yeah.
And then there are two tabs there: panelists, which are us, and the attendees, who are all the people who have already joined.
Ah, yes.
And they're listening. So hello, everybody. We'll start. We'll start soon.
Okay.
Okay. Great. So, right. Okay. We still have a few minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, having the list of who's there helps a little bit, because then, you know, if that, of course, it may well be that if you lose the connection, all those people just stay there. It doesn't know better. And so it just keeps the same list it had before it died.
True.
Telecom and networking and all that stuff is flaky beyond belief. You know what the device that's most returned to electronic stores is, what product it is that they get people coming back and bringing the product back the most?
No.
Wi-Fi routers.
Okay.
Buy it, they can't get it to work. They go back to the store and say, it doesn't work, I want my money back. And the store says, yeah, we know, okay. Because it's got too many features. It's too complicated. It's got just too much crud. And plots from, you put it in, you plug it in, you turn it on, it works. There's a gazillion things you got to do first, none of which are required to make it work, but these are all cool features that somebody thought of, and the result is it's so complicated, people can't get it to work. And that's true of so many things. I would estimate that probably more than half of the software that I buy, I throw out ultimately within a week, because I can't figure out how to make it do the very simple thing I want it to do, because it's focused on some enormously complicated special case that somebody wanted. Like I plug in a printer I want it to print, but it can't because I have to select the printer, but I only have one printer. So why do I have to select the printer? Because I might have two printers. Or I have to select the monitor, but I only have one monitor, but you might have four monitors. So you've got to do monitor selection somewhere deep in the menu system, even though I've only got one monitor, because it's set up for, arbitrarily large number of monitors. And there's so much stuff like that where everything caters to the most complicated case. And so the simple case, I just want to print my file, is very hard because you have to first select, which printer you want. You have to select which paper size you want, even though I only have one paper size. You have to select black and white or color, although the printer is only black and white and can't do color. And you have to decide whether you want, one-sided or two-sided, but because the printer can only do one-sided, and all these things. But, if you get one of them wrong, it doesn't work. And there's so much of this industry is so focused on that. It drives me nuts. Anyway. If somebody were to ask me, what's the thing you dislike most about computing? I'd have a hard time answering.
Okay, I'll make sure to add this question to the list of questions for the Ask Me Anything.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll start in 1 minute.
So what's the protocol? Did they send the questions to you and you read them or what?
Yes, so we have a Slack channel and people will be posting their questions there. Anwar will be monitoring the channel and picking the questions that people vote up. So we have a voting system also, so people can upvote the questions that they like. And then she will read them out to you and then you can respond.
Who will do that? Antonio?
I'll do that. Anwar. Hi, Andrew. Yes.
You're Anwar?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
She's the moderator.
Oh.
So, and I'll introduce you.
Right. So
yeah.
I will just make a short introduction of the session. Welcome everybody, then give it over to you.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Okay, I think we can start. Hello everybody, welcome to the first Ask Me Anything session at EuroSys 2021. I just want to welcome everybody. So my name is Vasiliki Kalavri. I'm an assistant professor at Boston University, and I'm chairing the Ask Me Anything sessions. So for those of you who don't know, this will be an open session where we have invited 5 exceptional guests. So today, tomorrow, and on Wednesday. And the way this works is that we have an Ask Me Anything channel on Slack, so hashtag AMA. And there you will see a pinned post for every Ask Me Anything session. So you can go under the post and post your questions, or you can also upvote the questions that are already there. And then the moderator will introduce our guest and start picking questions from the Slack channel. And we'll have hopefully an interesting conversation and fun conversation today. So with that, I will just pass it over to Anwar. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Vasia, for the introduction. So hello, everyone. Welcome to this session of Ask Me Anything with Andrew Tenenbaum. I am Anwar Hifnawi, a research fellow at ETH Zurich, where I lead the Privacy Preserving System Research Lab. So today I will be moderating this session of Ask Me Anything, and our guest is Andrew Tenenbaum. So thank you, Andrew, for joining us. But before we start, I'll just give a very, very brief introduction about Andrew. Andrew was born and raised in New York. He received his bachelor degree in physics from MIT and has a PhD degree from UC Berkeley. He is currently a professor emeritus of computer science at the Free University of Amsterdam. Andrew is the principal designer of 3 operating systems, among which the Minix operating system he designed primarily for teaching purposes. In addition, Andrew is the author and co-author of 5 books, which have been translated into 21 languages, and many are regarded as standard textbooks for undergraduate, graduate education, computer science. The Modern Operating System book was the first to introduce me to the operating system field, so a personal thank you from me, Andrew. Andrew is an ACM and IEEE fellow. He received many prestigious and lifetime achievement awards for his fundamental contribution, not only to research, but as well education. Thank you, Andrew, for all your contribution and for being with us today. And I'll actually start by reading questions. So I'll take them. I think I'll take the first question with the most upvote, and I believe that is from Pramod from from TU Munich. And Pramod is saying, Andy, you have been a great role model as an academic. You excelled in both research and teaching. According to the Wikipedia page, you have considered teaching as your primary responsibility, but you did exceptional and fundamental research during your career. So my question to you, how did you manage to balance both teaching and research activities? And I think he wanted to just highlight that today the university are growing so fast, so the number of students is blowing up. So any advice you can give to younger faculties who are heckling between teaching activities and research activities, and how they can strive in both at the same time, from your experience?
Work hard. I don't think there's, I mean, well, you know, teaching has sort of 2 parts to it. There's teaching undergraduates, which, you know, is relatively straightforward. You know, you need to make good slides, and, you know, I've always, in the past, I tended to teach first-year students where I had the opportunity, because they're more enthusiastic. They get more blasé as they get older. So I was lucky there. And of course, the PhD students are a whole different category, because the teaching of the students and the research are very much, you know, intertwined. But I don't think there's any magic formula. You just have to, you know, try to find courses you like to teach. And, you know, if you get stuck with something you don't want, well, it's going to be harder. You know, for young faculty members, the reality is you're not judged on your teaching, you're judged on your research output, you know, like it or not. And so you have to, you know, spend a fair amount of time on your research and getting things published and all that kind of stuff. There's no way around that.
Okay, good. That's a good answer. So I'll head to the second question. This is a question by Vasya from Boston University. And Vasya is asking, in your opinion, what is one of the most important recent advances in systems research? What is one of the biggest still open challenges in systems research or operating system research in general?
Recent, how recent? Yeah, I'm not sure what recent means.
Well, recent, we're a fast moving forward field. So
yeah, I mean,
we'd say
today, this week, you know, gee, I don't know. Let me think for a second here. Certainly open source is important. That's a very important development that's been going on for a while in its, you know, all of its stuff, you know, recent. I mean, the internet, that's, you know, goes back 20 years. That really has changed the world in many, many ways. You know, it depends on, you know, on how far back people, what's the greatest invention ever, you know, I'd say, like, you know, money, you know, before money, you know, you could barter a sheep, but it was hard to make change, you know. The internet certainly, you know, again, it's maybe 30 years old. It goes back to 1969, the ARPANET, but certainly the internet, I think, is going to change not only computer science and systems research, but also society. There'll be have already been huge changes in, you know, things like, you know, people used to go to get music by going to a store and buying a CD-ROM. well, first of all, there aren't any stores anymore, and there aren't any, there aren't any CDs anymore. It's all, streamed. So the internet certainly has had a huge impact, and I think that's going to continue in education and, shopping and entertainment, many things. More recent, the whole thing of cloud computing and what that implies, I think is going to be important. AI has been promising the moon for the last 30 or 40 years, hasn't delivered very much yet, might still someday. I've got a talk where I can't, find it in a couple of seconds, but, I've got quotes from some famous people about things that maybe they shouldn't have said, like Lord Kelvin in 1895. Lord Kelvin was probably the most famous physicist of the 19th century. Said 1895, heavier than air flight is impossible. Okay, so he didn't believe, he knew about dirigibles and hot air balloons, but he didn't think airplanes would ever catch on. Of course, 5 years later, the Wright brothers were tooling around North Carolina trying to decide whether they wanted to serve chicken or pasta. So making predictions of where we're going is very hard. I think the internet is the thing which jumps out as being, and everything related to it in very broad sense, not just, routers and IP addresses, but the fact that, everything is there. I mean, Alan Kay in 1971 envisioned a thing the size of a book that had many books in it. Okay, he did not envision a thing the size of a book, now called an iPad, which had the entire history, entire information of the entire world in it. That really is a pretty big change from, 1960 or even 1980. So I mean, information is everywhere. It's a huge change for society, that anything you want, affecting school. Is it really important to know when Columbus allegedly discovered America? Because if you don't know, you can go look it up pretty easily. But education hasn't really evolved to the point where you don't have to know what the capital of, Russia is, because you ever have to know. You can find that out pretty quickly. So I don't know, maybe I'd go with the internet. But, so a longer time scale, not the last 3 years. I mean,
Yeah. So because we are on this line of visionary stuff, so Amir is asking, is that as one of the most visionary computer scientists, what was the most important thing you predicted about the future of systems research, but contrary to your prediction, it did not come true?
I thought that making systems reliable would be important. Okay. And I thought, that Minix was designed as a highly reliable, highly modular system. And, back in 1992, Linus Torvalds took it and ran with it, and he made it, I think, worse than it was already there. If he'd taken it and made it better, that would be even great. But it was a very modular, relatively fault tolerant, system. And he went back to the old, monolithic kernel where everything is dependent upon, where everything's in one address space. And if you install a driver written by, some kid in Taiwan and it doesn't quite work, the whole thing goes down. So I thought reliability would be important, and people actually, it turns out, don't care about reliability, or at least the companies that sell computers and stuff don't really care much about reliability. If it works sort of much of the time, that's good enough. And that was, I think, very disappointing. I really had thought that people would demand it. The EU at one point was toying, and may still be toying, with the idea of making software fall under the same laws for a product liability as everything else. Like if a tire manufacturer makes a tire and 1 in 10 million tires explodes and cars crash, the tire manufacturer cannot get away with tires explode sometimes. That's the way it is. That doesn't work. They get sued for lots and lots of money. With software, you make software, it doesn't work. You simply say, software doesn't work, that's the way it is, and it's okay. Maybe we need to change the model there. So software has to fall under the same requirements as basically everything else. If you make a toaster and people touch it and get an electric shock at 220 volts and get electrocuted, you can't say, yeah, toasters sometimes give shocks. That doesn't work. But for software, it seems to work. And I really had thought that, reliability and so on would become important, and it hasn't.
Yeah, that's a good answer. So I'll have maybe similar or along this line as Lucian is asking, Lucian from University of Cambridge, are there any ideas in system research which you feel are underappreciated or should be more widely known?
Well, it's again, I think reliability and fault tolerance and so on, make the stuff work. Also, I think.
Do you think would there be anything need to change now for that probably in the future to be considered more seriously, or just?
Well, if the EU were to go through and to make software fall under the normal liability of other products, and that if your software didn't work and somebody was damaged by it, you were liable and could be sued, that would change a lot of things. That would change companies' views on where they should put their money. You know, if they knew that, you know, bugs in their software resulted in identity theft and people's bank accounts being robbed, all of a sudden that would make the security officer at that company a much more important person. You know, now they blame it on somebody else. I mean, there's all these, you know, I mean, I'm pretty careful about this, but I got, you know, I sent a package off to the US a couple of days ago. And the day after, I got a message purportedly from the post office saying, oh, you have to pay the duty in advance. Now, normally the duty is, if there's duty, is paid by the receiver, not the sender. But the US has been moving all the, you know, the effort on the sending side. So before sending a package, you have to go online, say what it is, who it's going to, pay for it in advance, get their label, put their label on it. And I really didn't know if this message was legitimate because I did send the package to the US the day before. So maybe, you know, of the million people they sent out, 4 of them had sent packages to the US the day before. And I'm very conscious of this. I still didn't know is this legit or not, you know? Why hasn't the industry done something to deal with security and this kind of stuff and make this kind of stuff impossible? I mean, it's not technically impossible. You have to do it differently. You know, I've got bank accounts in a couple of banks. Some of them take security seriously and some of them don't. There's various ways you can do it. I mean, in the US, most banks simply have, you know, a login name and a password. That's just dreadful. You know, in Europe, many of the banks have little gadgets. You have to do a challenge response with it. That's better. So I think security and reliability really ought to get, you know, and I think researchers have to develop techniques for doing that, of course. How do you do security and reliability in a way that, you know, really works and isn't too onerous? So I would say I would put security and reliability as important things for security, you know, for systems researchers to work on.
Yeah.
In a broad sense, not just better crypto.
Cool, thank you. So I have another question that I think I'll read. It's from Shadi TU Munich, and Shadi is asking, in a very applied and practical field like computer systems, where industry is playing an important role, what can researchers from academia focus on in order to stay relevant and impactful with much less resources and access to real world? And maybe just to follow up on this, shall we have different focuses between, or shall researchers collaborate more with industry? I mean, most of our research is heavily influenced by industry.
I'm inclined to say no, that industry doesn't want to change anything. You know, they have very short-term perspective. And I think research, you know, I think if, you know, Tim Berners-Lee had been thinking about, you know, what industry wants, he would not have invented the web, you know, because that's not what wasn't on their agenda at that moment. I've often complained about the SOSP conference, to some extent EuroSys, SOSP a little bit more than EuroSys. Its motto is, we make Linux 2% faster. It's not really clear that research should be doing things, you know, that are so closely tied to what's going on now. And that's what industry wants, you know. Can you do something that's a little bit better than we have now? But a blue sky thing, you know, they tend not to want that. I was talking to somebody else the other day about education. And I don't, for example, one thing that would be, whoops. Oh, do you, you know, like the current way kids learn a foreign language is you start out by memorizing irregular verbs, you know, but another way one could do that is say a kid in France wants to learn German and a kid in Germany wants to learn French. You hook up an audio-visual hookup between the two of them. You give them a shared screen. You give them some kind of thing like Google Translate. So initially, when they don't know the language, they can at least communicate that way and have them talk to each other. And you know, one of the kids drags a dog to the screen and says Hund, and the other one says Chien, and they say, ah, that's what they call them over there. Industry is not looking for that, but that would be, you know, revolutionary research that would really have a big change on society and education and so on. There are many, many things like that. No industry is looking for that. They want, you know, their kind of product to be a little bit better and, you know, maybe security 5% better without changing the way people do things and so on. So I'm not much of a fan of working with industry a lot. I think researchers should look for things that they think are going to be important without regard, because I think all the major developments, you know, I mean, for example, virtual machines, that was a project of Mendel Rosenblum and his students at Stanford. Industry was not demanding virtual machines, but now it turns out it's really important. You know, all of cloud computing is based on it. You know, all the big banks run virtual machines, but nobody was demanding it back in 1990, you know, that these guys thought it was a cool idea and went out and did it. So I think industry is too short-sighted and you shouldn't pay a lot of attention to what they're asking for. And there's some exceptions, some research labs a little bit more forward-looking. But, you know, like Bell Labs, I was at Bell Labs for a while. They were very, you know, forward-looking, but that's gone now almost. It's a shadow of itself. So I would say, no, don't pay too much attention to industry.
Okay, Andrew. So, so we still have many questions, but I would probably, just for the sake of changing a bit the topic, I'll go to more of the questions in the flavor, the human behind, Andrew. So we have a couple of questions in that direction. And so Andrew, what is your, do you have any hobbies, or what do you do in your free times, or if you read, what are your favorite books? There's a couple of questions that were popped up. And I actually would like to know personally how you decided you want to the moment and the feeling when you decided to spend a career in academia. Was there a spark moment that you had a realization, oh, that's something I would like to spend my career doing, education and research, or that was circumstances more than actually a choice? Although I would believe around the time you started your career in industry was very appealing place.
I'm something of a photographer, and if you look at my homepage and there at the bottom, there's a bunch of links to photos I've taken in, I don't know, about 30 or 40 countries. And some of that, for a while, I know I haven't looked at it in a long time, but for a while, if you typed in photos in Namibia, I was like #3 in the whole world. And photos of India, I was in the top 5. And photos, quite a few countries, I was in the top couple. It has to do with Google's ranking system to some extent. But I've been asked, you know, the BBC said, we're doing a program on India and we need pictures of India. And because of the copyright laws, we need permission from the photographers to do that. We found this really cool picture you have of India. Can we use it, you know, and so on. And I've had sold photos to the United Nations and a whole bunch of other things. So I would say a moderately good photographer, if that counts as a hobby. I haven't done much travel in the last year, but I've been to about over 50 countries. So that might count as a hobby. And I also have this blog, electoral-vote.com, which I've had since 2004, where I keep track of US politics, and especially in, you know, presidential election years. There's this crazy system the US has of the electoral votes, the electoral college, okay? And it doesn't matter, like in 2004, there were all these polls saying, you know, John Kerry, 42%, George Bush, 43%. It doesn't matter, because what matters are the electoral votes, not the popular vote. And I went out and collected the state polls, figured out how many electoral votes every state had, and began displaying a map showing the electoral votes, you know, every day instead of the popular vote. And at first I just gave it to my friends, but by October I had 600,000 friends, and I was the most popular political website in the United States. And then in 2008, I had 1.5 million people at the high point, and I'm still doing it. And right now we're lower, but we had 400,000 visitors on election day last year. So you might say blogging about US politics might qualify as a hobby. I don't make any money off it, so I guess it isn't a business or anything. So that's kind of a hobby. As to getting into academia, I don't know. It just, you know, I mean, my background on that is a little bit strange. When I was a kid, people keep asking me, do you want to be a policeman or a fireman? And I got tired of that. And so I began saying, no, I want to be a nuclear physicist. And I said, you don't want to be a policeman? I said, no, I want to be a nuclear physicist. That shut them up, okay? When I got to MIT, they said, what do you want to be? And I said, nuclear physicist. And I said, fine, we have an excellent nuclear physics department. We'll assign you an advisor of nuclear physics. It's a great choice, okay? After I got my PhD in physics, I said, well, wait a minute. I didn't actually like physics. You know, I was just trying to get these people off my back, okay? And so, you know, I was at this point a very good programmer, Fortran programmer. And I'd use that during my PhD a lot and so on. And so I figured, maybe I shouldn't say this at EuroSys. I'm a little bit careful, but I'll say it anyway. I figured I could never get a job as a programmer in the US because they say you're a physicist. And I figured in Europe, they wouldn't know the difference between a physicist and a programmer. So I got a list of all the computer centers in Europe. Remember, computer centers don't exist anymore, but they did then, from the Stanford Library, and had my computer send every one of them a letter offering my services as a Fortran programmer, okay? And it turns out in Amsterdam, I'd been in Amsterdam, I got a bunch of job offers back. And the weirdest thing, which is maybe the reason I went to academia, was in Amsterdam. I'd been in Amsterdam the summer before. And, you know, it was my first time in Europe. And I was very surprised on the train from Gatwick into London that I saw houses and gardens and dogs and all kinds of things. And I'm like, what's going on here? All my friends said Europe is only castles and you know, and art museums. What they didn't say about dogs and gardens. So I was very surprised about what was going on. I think many Americans have that view of, they have no idea what's going on in the world. But anyway, I applied, and people in Amsterdam are very nice. And one of the places I applied to was the Computer Center in Amsterdam, okay, which was jointly by the universities. And there was a professor there who had two spontaneous applicants. He had unsolicited applicants, one from me and one from a guy at UCLA who had a PhD in computer science. And they had two jobs available, one as a Fortran programmer at the Computer Center and one as an assistant professor in the computer science department. Now, it was obvious the guy with the PhD from UCLA should have been the assistant professor in the computer science department, and I should have been the programmer in the Computer Center because I was an expert on Fortran and also on the machine they had just bought. But he got it wrong. He put me in the computer science department because he didn't understand the difference between a computer science department and a programmer at a computer center, which, you know, agreed with my, you know, observation that they didn't know the difference. And so I got put in the academic computer science department, and I was like the second employee, and they had no idea how to do research. They had no idea to organize anything. We're actually part of the math department. And I had, of course, had a background in academia from my PhD. And so, you know, I sort of tried to change the way the department worked and you know, little things. When we had another vacancy, normally the professor in charge just took his most recent student. I wrote about 200 letters to every university I could think of in the world and said, we have a vacancy, you know, please hang this on your bulletin board. And we got, you know, dozens of applicants. Nobody ever done that before. And so it was like a complete freak accident how I got into academia due to a mistake. Oh, the professor who offered me the job called me at 3 o'clock in the morning because he didn't realize that California had a different time zone than Amsterdam. And he invited me to dinner after I got there. And his kids said to me, or said to him, what's the matter with him? Why can't he talk normal? Because they didn't realize there were other languages in the world than Dutch. So, you know, he was a nice guy and very helpful in many ways, but he wasn't, you know, up to date on a lot of things like the difference between programming and computer science research. And so
yeah,
it was kind of a freak accident.
I'm so glad this mistake happened then. So I'll go for probably, I'm not really sure, probably the last or the second last questions. And this is from Antonio from University of Edinburgh. And Antonio is asking, thinking about your research in distributed operating system, in which way distributed operating system research impacted today's world? What is the future of distributed operating systems?
It's hard to tell what, you know, an operating system is in some sense. I think it's become a little bit less important. You know, I wrote a book called Distributed Operating Systems, which I may or may not have around here somewhere. Where is the book? Where are you? I got a lot of books here. I can't find it, but it was called Distributed. Ah, here it is. I found it. Okay. You know, Distributed Operating Systems. The second edition, we gave up. We changed the name to Distributed Systems because the operating system didn't play as much of a role going forward as I thought it was going to. That, you know, I mean, most operating systems, you know, Windows, Mac OS, Linux, and so on, are just regular old operating systems that run on one computer. But what you're seeing is distributed systems where every computer has its own operating system. The operating systems don't relate to each other, but there's a layer on top of the operating system, something called middleware, which makes the whole thing work together as a coherent whole. And so I don't think that there's a lot of work going to happen in distributed operating systems. And I think the action is going to be in the middleware layer, where the idea is to make all the computers distributed over a wide area work together in some coherent way, like, for example, accessing a database or, you know, trying to achieve some goal. but it's not so much going to be in the operating system. I think each computer is going to have its own operating system, and they may be different. I mean, you may have Windows computers and Mac computers and Linux computers and FreeBSD computers all working together with this layer of middleware, providing a common interface for the applications, even though the underlying operating system is all very different.
Yeah. So I believe this would be the last question, maybe your concluding remarks. So computer science or systems research had influenced society to a massive degree. There's little thought on societal impact as we designed the internet or the systems, but recently we started to feel the consequences of these issues, and governments and policies are working in issues like ethics and privacy and security. Is there something else we can do as researchers, both in education and as well in research, to make sure that our fingerprint on society is actually a good one, and try to avoid a lot of the pitfalls of what could probably be
as I said before, I think reliability, fault tolerance, security, those issues are more important than trying to crank the next 2% out of Linux. The things, like phishing, how can we make systems where that's not possible? I'll give you one example of a very simple, small thing, but it's very small, is that I know of a couple of banks where when you sign up as a customer, they ask you for a picture and they ask you for a little phrase, which could be, anything you want, okay? And when you log in, they show you the picture that you gave them when you signed up, and they show you the phrase. And so you can tell whether it's phishing or not, because if you don't see your picture that you gave them, and the phrase could be anything. The phrase could be cock-a-doodle-doo, something you think that a phishing person wouldn't think of, if you don't see the picture and you don't see the little phrase, it's not them. That greatly improves the security. That's a very small thing, but there's a lot more, of course, you can do. And so I think work in better reliability, better security, those areas would be, if you're trying to make societal impact, to eliminate all the computer fraud and phishing and hacking and so on, things make more secure. People hack computers because they're very unreliable. If you made them bulletproof, that couldn't happen. Why don't people do that? Because they're trying to make everything 2% faster. And I think that that's the wrong focus, that you're trying to make it so it's much more secure, much more reliable. So that's my take on what, if you want to be an ethical researcher. And there's plenty of work to be done there. We're not done with any of that by any means.
So Andrew, we're approaching the end of this session. Do you have any final remarks you wanna or advice you wanna give to younger researchers, or just end this session with any nice any thoughts?
Keep an open mind. Try to think out of the box. I see Anne-Marie is ready. Anne-Marie.
Yes, hello. Nice to see you.
My former postdoc, who I'm very proud of, is now a big star.
Nice to see you.
Yes. So, and Willie, who I know very well, is also doing one of these sessions. But you're having a good time in Switzerland?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a good place.
No, it's a very good place. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So I believe this is the end of our session. Thank you all for attending and tuning with us. Andrew, pleasure to have you here with us. Thank you for all your insightful remarks, and enjoy the rest of EuroSys all. Have a lovely time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Take care. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to this Ask Me Anything session where we will be hosting Anne-Marie Kermarek. So I hope everyone is well and safe. Before we start, let me introduce myself. So I am Miguel Matos. I'm a professor at the University of Lisbon in Portugal. And my research is mostly on systems, large-scale distributed systems, and more recently also non-volatile memory. So as before, if you have questions for Anne-Marie, please ask them in the Ask Me Anything Slack channel. We have a thread there for this session, and I will be picking questions from there. So before we start, let me introduce Anne-Marie. So Anne-Marie Kermarek is a professor at EPFL since January 2020. Before that, she was the CEO of MIDI Ego, a startup that she founded in April 2015 that provides personalization services for online publishers. Before, she has been with Vrije University, Microsoft Research Cambridge in UK, and in RIA in France. She received an ERC grant in 2008 and the ERC proof of concept in 2013. And she also received the Montpetit Award from the French Academy of Science in 2011 and the Innovation Prize in 2017. She's a member of the European Academy since 2013. And in 2016, she was named an ACM Fellow for contributions to large-scale distributed computing. Currently, our research interests are in large-scale distributed systems. So, Anne-Marie, welcome. Thanks for being available. And
thank you for the invitation.
It's a pleasure. So let's us get started with the questions. And the first question I will pick is the one from Pramod Batotia from TU Munich. And he asks, hello, Anne-Marie, thanks for your leadership at EuroSys. So, and the question is, how can we further strengthen system research in Europe?
Well, that's a very good question. As a matter of fact, I had no idea what kind of question I would receive in this kind of session. Well, I guess conferences like EuroSys have really made this clear European sort of crowd around a system that has been very beneficial from this standpoint. So that's clearly one thing that we still need to keep, going with. And I'm very happy to see how many attendees there is, even on an online event. So that's a very clear sign that there is a vibrant community in Europe. How can we strengthen it even more? I guess, well, the past year has been a disaster from that standpoint because we couldn't even see each other. But I guess, trying to foster collaboration, and I mean, I'm really looking forward. I think our life will change after this crisis, in the sense that we might not, travel for any reason, but really still going to conferences and having them physical and everything is actually something which will be very important to foster the community. I have no magic recipe for this. One thing that I would like to, a message that I would like to deliver, and that's from experience to the community, and that's from experience in hiring committees in very different places, and also panelists in very different selection committees, is that I think a good way to strengthen the area in Europe is to help each other. Okay, not to fight each other, including in committees and stuff, because it has been shown. I've been in many committees with mathematicians and computer scientists, for instance, and or physicists. Well, physicists or mathematicians, when they talk about each other, they always defend themselves like mad, right? I've seen computer scientists and especially system people doing, because it's not even so much true in theory, doing somehow the opposite. Like trying to find out always the same. So I would say one thing that is important is to support each other. If we want to be recognized as a community, we need to support each other. So that means that we need to think of each other when there are some awards. We need to support those applications, of course, not at any price, right? But I mean, not fight against each other. I think this is a general advice for the area. That you can implement at many different levels whether that's in reviewing project papers, whatever.
Thank you for the insights. And in fact, too much competition can be sometimes, well, too much. So let's go to the next question, which is kind of related to something you already raised, which is working environment. And this one is from Vasiliki Kalavari from Boston University. And the question is, as someone who has spent time in research labs, universities, and a startup, which working environment do you enjoy the most and why?
Okay, well, this is very different. I would say the way I would see this is more academia versus which is basically research labs or industry. I would put this in the same kind of context. So the main difference I see is between running the startup and running a lab, for instance. So the difference is mostly, so there are two main differences. One obviously is the kind of topic you are working on. Okay, so when you're in a startup, you have plenty of ideas. You know, have plenty of real problems that come up every day, and you don't have time to solve them. Okay, so this is typically on the side. So on the scientific side, it can be a little bit frustrating from that standpoint. So this is really nice because you have, you know, you have an idea. From an idea, you have a product. So that's a very nice feeling. But at the same time, technically, it can be slightly frustrating when you don't have the time to and if you have a researcher kind of mind, then you don't have the time to do it. Now, so that's for the technical part. On the opposite, you know, when you're in a lab, you can actually work on pretty much any problem you want, and you know, you have the time and the people to work on any topic. Now, one of the main difference I see as well is in the people, the team management. My experience in so in, you know, research, well, whether that was at INRIA, for instance, or here now at EPFL, you have some postdoc students, and, you know, you sort of work together, but somehow you work with, I mean, and people work with whoever they want, basically. Okay, you sort of choose the people you work with, and you, as long as the interaction between you and your student is good, then if for some reason they don't work together, or they don't want to work with someone else, or they won't, then that's fine. Now in a startup, you know, you're like, so that was a small startup, but at the back we were 10. You need to have the 10 people working together in the same direction. You cannot, you know, sustain basically having someone who is just doing something different. So it's a much more challenging management role, I think. Now, my experience at MSR was somehow in the middle, I would say, in the sense that scientifically, well, plus MSR at the time was really like, you know, a lot of freedom on the topics you were doing, really brilliant people to work with. And so, I mean, you could that was more of an academic environment, yet you had this sort of impact potentially. I mean, potentially you could see where your work could have an impact eventually, but it's different, you know. It's a very rich experience to run a startup, and having seen this human kind of component was very interesting. Now I'm actually very happy to be back in academia, and what I also like a lot in academia is this freedom in a way, and the company of my fellow colleagues as well.
Thank you for the very interesting insights on both sides of the coin. Let's put it that way. So related to these pursuing of ideas, the next question is from Antonius Katsakaris from the University of Edinburgh. And the question is, what habits or things, could be anything, have sparkled or cultivated the most creative ideas of yours?
What's the beginning?
What habits or things have sparkled the most creative ideas?
Oh, that's a tough question. I said, and because we had Andy right before, you know, so I came as a postdoc with Andy and Martin Van Steen at Fine University when, so a long time ago. I wouldn't even say the date now, right? So So basically, my quick answer would be people, some people that you meet. You know, I think most of my research have been sort of been influenced by some people that I heard at, you know, giving a talk or met or work on these kind of things. So Andy and Martin were definitely part of this, because when I came as a postdoc, what I learned from them is really the sort of long-term vision that they cultivated at the time, and probably now again in the lab. So, like, you know, as Andy said, try to think out of the box, not necessarily on things what you know, that everybody is working on right now, and I think that was a very wise thing to say to a younger postdoc researcher, and so that really, I think, influenced the way I did my research after that. And then I would say, you know, so what are the things I've been working on really were you know, some kind of gossip-based algorithms, peer-to-peer system. I was really working at that time at some point, and those were really, you know, being at the right place with the right kind of people at the same, you know, at the time at Microsoft Research. We started to work on gossip with at EPFL, with some collaboration at EPFL as well. So I think that was meeting people, you know, and then trying to trust them, sort of kind of mentor, and trying to trust them on the topic. And then, of course, then I came to recommendation systems and more peer-to-peer, and I became, you know, more of a leader on these things. And I guess what triggered this was mostly some kind of long-term, you know, what would be the next big challenge, and sometimes it's hard, because when you do things that you know, nobody is trying to do yet, then it's harder to actually get sometimes in the community, right? Because people, so it's not always the most comfortable thing. But at the end of the day, I think it makes things interesting, and sometimes you have the right, you know, the right idea at the right time.
Great. Thank you again. So next question, and I will join two questions which they are kind of related. So this is from Vasiliki Kalavari from Boston University, and I will be joining this question with one from Valerio Schiavone from the University of Switzerland. And the question is, so two questions: what is your favorite systems paper of all time? And the second question is there a paper you wish you had written but someone else did?
Yes, my favorites. Well, maybe, is it a system paper? Actually, let me say, I guess one paper that I liked quite a lot, but that was a POTSI paper, but that was a system paper. Okay, that was the one on Bayou.
Okay.
You know, that introduced gossip for consistency. Which paper I wish I had written? Well, I guess recently, okay, there are two. One, because maybe I would be very rich now, is a Bitcoin paper. that I would have been, yeah. No, this one, it's not that the paper I would have to write, but I mean, being in this area of, you know, gossip and large-scale distributed systems and everything, and having seen, you know, like being the killer app somehow. So it's probably not the best paper ever, but this is really something that I wish I would believed enough in what I was doing to come up with these kind of things. And, you know, and actually realized this earlier, you know, I could have actually, even when I read this paper, I wouldn't believe it really. So otherwise I would have bought Bitcoins, right?
Yes,
so.
Every one of us would have done so.
But that's a very good question, actually. I wish I had prepared the answer to that question. Thank you, Valerio.
Yes, thank you, Anne-Marie. And what I find interesting, just as a parenthesis about Bitcoin, was that it came from outside the academia, which is really interesting. Kind of the main ideas were already in place, of course, but putting it together, it was, well, we don't know, but it was quite interesting to see what it turned out to be. So next question, a bit related also with the topic we have been discussing about ideas and so on, and it is from Animesh Trivedi. How do you identify interesting research problems or projects to work on? And do you have a process to do this?
Not really. I cannot give you an algorithm to come up with a good research problem. The way I do it really is that I have this sort of interest in a number of topics, which are sort of scalability. I'm always interested in network topology. I'm always interested in sort of gossip-based algorithms and these kind of things. And then I guess the way I pick research topics, at least to work with my students, is that I have always sort of a few ideas on different things that I didn't have time to do, and I sort of offer them what kind of topic they would like to address, and then depending on their taste, and they would pick one or two, and we go from there. So that's one thing. But there is another thing, and this is why I love conferences, where I sort of pick some ideas as well, are in conferences, because sometimes it's sort of, taking the time to, stay in the room for, a few hours and listen to other topics. And you very often in computer science come up with some ideas where you can cross disciplines or sub areas, and that could be very fruitful. Now, one other thing that is also kind of useful in our business, well, probably in many research areas as well, is to start from a paper that you really like and trying to go beyond or do the follow-up of something like this. That is the most practical tip I could give for studying research.
Thank you. So let's move a little bit away from the more technical side. And I have here two questions. The first one is from Carlos Baquero from the University of Minho. And the question is, now that we learn that we can work well online and work worse at the same time, what is, in your perspective, the best use of in-person meetings? So face-to-face meetings.
What is the best what?
What is the best use of in-person meetings? Yes.
Well, I experienced, so I joined EPFL, 2 months before the lockdown. So I can say that I built my lab, studied my teaching, everything online. So I think the best use, so I would, as I said earlier, conferences is definitely something that I think will be back. Now, maybe in a hybrid mode, because some people cannot or do not want to travel, then that's still nice if they can attend to these kind of things. So in that sense, I think we will go back to physical meetings, but still with this change, which is we might have hybrid modes. That might actually be the same for teaching. But I'm telling you, teaching completely offline for now is just not the same experience. I mean, you have, you do not see anyone, and students that tend not to, they never put their camera on. So you never see, you don't see anybody, you don't see the faces, you don't know whether you got, so that I think, teaching will be also back online. And obviously, interaction with your group, with your lab, is something that we all miss quite a lot right now. So these three things I think will be back as they were, maybe with some adaptations in the sense that, maybe you can still do a little bit of remote work here and there or these kind of things, but we will go back to normal. Things that I'm not sure will go back to normal are actually all the panels. because I think those works quite well online, you know. Program committee, except it's nice to see, program committee are always very nice times for researcher because you get to see friends and everything. But otherwise, I mean, apart from this part, the technical part of a program committee, I think work well online as well. And, you know, flying at the other end of from one point in Europe to the other just for 1-2 hour meeting, I don't think that will ever happen again. So, but, you know, the basics of our job, which is teaching, you know, conference and lab, I think they will be back to normal. I hope.
I hope so as well. So the next question is a very relevant one from Christian Kadar. And the question is, so unfortunately, the percentage of female authors at EuroSys and other conferences is too low. What can we do to improve gender diversity at our conference?
Oh, well, that's something that is very important. As a matter of fact, I just wrote a book on these kind of things, but that's in French, so I cannot even, you know, send it to EuroSys. But so yes, there are not many women in a system so first of all, there is not that many students in computer science, so there is so much you can do, okay? So there is many things that we can do before that to try to have more women in university in computer science or mathematics or whatever. But given the fact that there is like you know, between 10 and 15 at the moment, so much we can do. Now, there is even less, I guess, in systems for some reason, and that are not very explained. My take is that in the landscape of computer science, the closer you are to the machine, the lesser woman, for some reason. And also the, you know, when sort of a field has a lot of importance, and especially in, you know, becomes kind of prestigious. We've seen this typically in machine learning as well. There are less women, okay? Not necessarily because there are less women coming, but because men just go there because this is, you know, this is. So my take is, we don't have a lot of women, and we need to really sort of support them, both as men and women. And I think in our area, and that could be actually one of the roles that EuroSys could take, is to try to you know, really support the woman, in the sense that, you know, when you know them, you can try to act maybe as mentor or this kind of you know, for young women in this area, young faculty, for instance, to make sure, because there is always a lack of not always, but there is very often a lack of confidence in women more than in men. Plus, it's like, you know, it's even worse. Is and when women are confident, you know, they are not seen in a very positive way, you know. So either you're a sort of confident man is a normal, you know, and brilliant researcher, right? A confident woman is somehow a witch or something, you know. It's so there are some things that we need to think about. So my take is really, one, to try to support as much as we can with you know, I don't know, mentoring, or, you know, these kind of things to women that we know of, and make sure that they are confident enough. And second, to actually try to make people aware of the various bias that there is out there everywhere, you know, in recommendation letters, in hiring committee, in even the way that you look at a woman when you know, in the sense that taking them as seriously as men, and this kind of thing. So these are small things that we can do to try to make people realize that there are some bias out there. We try not to have them, but pretty much everybody does. And if we never talk about this, well, then that won't change. But I do not have a magic recipe, unfortunately.
Yes, I guess there is none, right? But these steps that you suggested, I believe they are really important. Yes, indeed. So we are almost running out of time. So let's end up with a more relaxed question. What do you do for fun? What are your hobbies?
Well, I'm doing a lot of sports. So this is really so I do two things basically. I am doing a lot of sports, so I think I practice one kind of sport every day almost. So I used to be a volleyball player, but now of course this is much more difficult to organize. So now I run, I cycle, I do some surf and some ski basically. So this is one thing that occupies me quite a lot. And the second thing is that I do is reading actually. I sometimes have some some peak of willing to play piano again, but that never flies very long. I'm sort of not very gifted on this, so on this front. So yeah, I guess this is it.
And what types of books do you read? Fiction, non-fiction?
Novels basically. Yes, this is this, and also some kind of science, kind of regularization kind of thing. So when I had my startup, I read quite a lot of other stuff like lean startup and these kind of things. But now this is over. Yeah.
Okay, so let's we are about to conclude. So any closing remarks, Anne-Marie, on your side? Any thoughts?
No, I think this is the first time I participate to this kind of session. So it's actually thank you for the invite, and I'm very pleased to see that there are quite a lot of people. So that's good. And I wish a very good edition of EuroSys, and I'm looking forward to going again in person. I would have loved to come to Edinburgh, so that's unfortunate. But yes, so I wish you all a very good conference, and thank you, Miguel, for animating this session. And thanks to Christian and Lorenzo as well for their hard job on the program. They did a great job.
Okay, thank you, Anne-Marie, for being available, and everyone else enjoyed the rest of the conference. And now I will give the floor to Vasiliki. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Miguel. Thank you, Anne-Marie. Thanks, everybody, for joining the Ask Me Anything sessions. So just a reminder, we have more sessions tomorrow and on Wednesday, so I hope to see you there. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, everyone.